Hi everybody, welcome back to my channel. Thank you so much for viewing, and if you like these videos, please subscribe to them. You'll get updates. I'm starting a natal chart series. We'll do a series of videos where I just break down some of the foundations of the natal chart. And we're going to start this series with the houses. So really just understanding what houses are and really trying to grasp the fact that we're actually every sign because of our houses, right? And I'll get more into that in a bit. So if you secretly always wanted to be a Leo, you're actually part Leo. And if you kind of have a thing against Geminis, you're also a Gemini. So really embracing all the signs and all the energies and understanding that they're all part of us. So the first thing to do before we really get into these natal charts is to pull your own natal chart if you don't have it already. So I always suggest a website, astro-charts.com. I put the link below. Go to that site because they're really clear about houses and which signs are, assigned to each house depending on your chart. So pause this video, head over there. You'll need to know your birth date, your location of birth, and your time of birth. So you may have to call your mom, tell her I said hi. So go grab your natal chart and then come on back. Okay, welcome back. I hope your mom was nice. She knew your time of birth. And if you don't know your exact time of birth, we just really need it within an hour or something. I know some moms are like, oh, I don't know, around noon. That was my mom forever. So, if you don't have the exact minute, it's okay. All right, so hopefully you have your chart in front of you and you can see that it basically looks like a pie, right? There's 12 pieces of the pie. And each piece, right, those are the houses, right? So there's 12 houses. And each house is comprised of 30 degrees, right? And that corresponds with each constellation is 30 degrees, right, in our sky. And so when we put all of the houses together, we get 360 degrees. Just like when we put all of the constellations of the zodiac together, we get a 360-degree ring, right? So we're working with that. And then each house will have different degrees within those 30 degrees, right? So planets will be at a certain degree, right? We're not going to get too much into planets, but just know if you see those numbers, if your sun is at 11 degrees, like Virgo, right? Your sun was at 11 degrees Virgo in the sky when you were born, right? So we'll see those degrees a lot. And I talk about those with moon transits whenever I'm going into new moon or full moon. I'll say oh, the new moon is at 15 degrees Scorpio this month. So, just getting a grasp on the degrees and that each house or each piece of your pie is comprised of 30 degrees. Okay, so we've got that down. And now you'll see that you probably have some planets in some houses and some houses may be empty. That's okay, right? Nothing to fret about. It's okay to have empty houses and it's okay to have a stack of planets in one house or under one sign. Every chart is unique and every chart is perfect, right? And, each chart is actually your energetic signature from a past life, right? And comes into the body at the point of birth on the first breath, right? So we can kind of see our past in a lot of ways and our past lives in our charts, which I'll get into even further along the line. But just know that, and know that your chart is not set in stone. These are just the energies that you're working with or you have the opportunity to work with, in this lifetime. We always have free will. No matter what, we always have free will. And just because your sun is in a certain sign, it doesn't mean you've mastered that energy already. You're actually trying to master that energy. So again, we'll get more into planets in another video. Just kind of set those aside. Focus on your 12 pieces, right? On your houses for this one. All right, so your chart starts with your first house, which is your rising sign. Now, it should be noted that most people don't have a perfect kind of match, with the sign and the house. A lot of people will have 2 signs per house because they'll overlap. I'm going to throw up Beyonce's chart here so you guys can kind of see her chart, and I'll use that as a demo and an explanation throughout this video. I actually know Beyonce's chart really well because her Libra is at 20 degrees, which is where it starts, and my Libra is at 20 degrees. So it's like very easy for me to talk about, which if you ever wondered why I always use her chart, that's why. In any event, her chart starts at 20 degrees Libra, right? So Libra was rising in the horizon, and it was right at 20 degrees when she was born. So her first house is comprised of that 20 and 30 degrees of Libra, that last chunk of Libra. And then also it goes into some Scorpio, right? She's about 1 to 20 degrees Scorpio. So her first house is ruled by Libra and Scorpio. Right. And then as you follow around with her chart and with yours, right, you can kind of see, like, next we get to second house, for Beyonce, that's ruled by Scorpio and Sagittarius, right? Third house, Sagittarius and Capricorn, right? So we're going around the wheel, and that slide I gave you is really clear in showing the signs, right, and which houses they correspond to. So just so you can kind of get a feel for, if you have 2 signs per house, most of us will. It's very rare to have an exact like 1 sign per house. You have to, be born at 0 degrees something, right? 0 degrees Libra or 0 degrees Leo or something to have a perfect corresponding 1 sign per house. All right, so these houses, what are they, right? Houses are the areas or arenas that these energies show up in, right? So they each correspond to a specific area of our life, right? So where the planets are sort of like, our personalities, right? Our emotions, or, it corresponds with the moon, and, our passion and frustration corresponds to Mars, for instance, and they're flavored by the signs, right? So we kind of take that and we say, okay, where does this show up? Right? Where does my passion, where does my Mars show up, right? That's dictated by your house, right? And that's why, no matter what, even if the house is empty, that area still exists in your life. And that area of your life will be ruled by the energy of the corresponding sign, which is why you're actually every sign, right? So every house has a corresponding sign or 2, and they're going to show up somewhere in your life, even if a planet is not within that house, right? You still have that area of your life. All right, so going a little bit into the houses, right? So first house is the house of the self, right? This is your image. This is what you project to the world. This often is your body, right? This is often what you show people. A lot of times, this is where our rising sign is. This is the mask that we wear to attract the energies which we need. Right, we go to second house. Second house is the house of possessions. It's the house of resources, right? That's what I really like to think about it. Like, how do you deal with finances? How do you deal with self-worth, right? How do you deal with your creativity? How do you deal with your internal assets, right? So whatever sign you have in that house is going to show, right, how you deal with your second house. So if we go back to Beyonce's chart, right, she has a Scorpio in her second house, which is a very deep sign. Scorpio is actually very much about transformation, psychological transformation. And then she also has Sagittarius, which is very much about expansion, right? Extending her energy outward, maybe travel, right? So for her, her resource is really about transformation, transforming her own mind through expansion, possibly through travel, right? So we start to see how these energies show up in our houses. And then we go to third house, house of communication. This is how we interact with the world. This is our exchanges. And this is oftentimes like our local environment. So our early childhood, right? What kind of environment that was. Our siblings, right? So, we look at Beyonce's and, she has Sagittarius and Capricorn in her third house. So again, Sagittarius expansion. So communication, right? Exchange is going to expand her, which I think it probably does. And then Capricorn, which is focus, right? So for her, it's like focus is what she gained from her early childhood experience. And that's sort of what helps her, on her mission to communicate with the world. Something tells me that she had a lot of focusing early on. All right, and then we go to now the fourth house, right? Fourth house is the house of the home, right? This is where we find our most internal landscape. If you notice that fourth house is at the bottom, right? It's deeply buried. The lowest point of your chart is that fourth house. So it's buried deep within. And then a lot of times, like if we split the house, if we divide it, right? If we divide the chart, what's above the horizon is what we project outward. What's below the horizon is what's internal, is what's subjective. And the fourth house is the most subjective of the houses, right? So whatever energy you have there is going to show you how you deal with your internal world, how you deal with your subjective experiences, right? Beyonce, we have Capricorn and Aquarius. So again, we have that internal focus, right? She probably can go very deep into meditation. And then Aquarius, we have humanitarianism, right? So doing things for the collective. That's what's going to give her the most security, right? Is when she's doing things for others, for the collective, right? Which, you know, she does in some ways. And so, you know, that's also what we find in the fourth house is what makes us feel secure. So whatever sign you have, whatever energy you have in your fourth house makes you feel secure. Okay, we get to the fifth house now, moving around. Fifth house is the house of joy, the house of creativity, the house of play, oftentimes called the house of children. So this is where we find our fun in life, right? What makes us smile. You know, when we're feeling misaligned or we're feeling down, you know, look to your fifth house to see what energy is going to kind of pull you out of any downward spiral. What's going to make you enjoy life again, right? When we look at Beyonce, we have that Aquarius, which is that, you know, collective, that speaking to the world, you know, is where she finds her creativity and her joy. And then we have Pisces, which is like sort of inward spirituality. So again, kind of like going inward and finding deeper meaning is actually going to bring her joy to herself and bring her creativity as well. Right. Sixth house, house of service, right? So here is where we find, you know, how we not necessarily serve, but how we bring our unique gifts to the world, right? How we deal with service, you know, are we okay with being of service? You know, how we interact with that energy of service, right? And so whatever energy you have there, whatever sign you have there, you might have Leo, you might have Virgo, whatever you have there is going to dictate how you deal with service. With Beyonce, she has Pisces and Aries. So she is of service through a Pisces, which is, you know, spirituality. Again, finding that deeper meaning helps her be of service. And then Aries is the sign of the self. So really putting herself first and out there in the world, using her motivation to inspire people is her service, right? So we can kind of start to see how these energies really interact with the houses. Thanks, Beyonce. Being a service right now. All right, so then we get to the seventh house, house of partnerships. All right, so this is how we find what energies really dictate how we deal with partnerships. And these can be romantic partnerships, they can be friendships, they can be business partnerships, right? So how do we deal with other people? That's it, you know, that is our seventh house, right? With Beyonce, we have Aries, again, the sign of the self. So she really needs to put herself first. I hope she does in her relationship and put, you know, her mission first, right? Aries is very much about putting your mission first, right? And then she also has Taurus in there, which is about putting her creativity first in her relationships and bringing creativity to relationships. Oftentimes when we see a Taurus seventh house placement, those are the people who really bring the resources into the partnership, and they bring sort of that worth component into the partnership, and they bring creative ideas into the partnership. So a lot of times, you know, the sign, like if you have a Sagittarius, for instance, in that seventh house, you know, you're going to bring expansion and travel. Maybe you're the one that's like, hey partner, let's go, let's get on the plane, you know, so we can start to see like whatever energy, whatever sign you have in that house, that's really, you know, what's going to theme it, right? And we're going to see that that's where that energy shows up. So say you have a planet in your seventh house, that's where that energy shows up in your partnerships. Right, get around to eighth house, House of personal growth and transformation, right? So this is where we find, how we deal with our inner psyche and how we transform and how we deal with our inner psychology and how we approach things, right? This is our arena of growth. It's like, how do you approach growth? With Beyonce, we have Taurus, which again is that creativity. So she's probably pretty creative about her personal growth and her transformations, and probably uses pretty creative things to do so. And then also Gemini, again, communication, right? So we're seeing that for somebody like Beyonce with Gemini in this 8th house, is communicating with others, exchanging information with others, being curious. That really helps her personal growth. That really helps her psychology, right? So that's where we see our psychology show up, 8th house. All right, 9th house. House of expansion, house of travel, house of truth and knowledge, right? So this is where we find what expands us. This oftentimes we'll see how we react to travel. Also how we react to our truth and how we gain truth from the world, right? How we gain truth from a global level, right? 3rd house is more like a local level. 9th house is like a global level, right? How we interact with the whole world, how we network with the whole world and gain information there. With Beyonce, we see Gemini there, which again is that communication, that direct communication and remaining curious. And then we also have Cancer, which is some emotional stuff, right? Some intuition, right? So her intuition is really going to lead her expansion. Somebody with a Cancer in this house, Cancer placement, we can really see how intuition can really come in handy during travel and can be fun to like lead your travel, not through planning or logic, but through intuitive knowledge, and that if I was like coaching Beyonce, that's something I tell her to do, is really use her intuition through travel. All right, we get up to 10th house, house of career. So we also see our reputation here and what other people think of us. Not so much like the 1st house, which is rising sign, but 10th house is really like, what our peers, like what our sort of reputation, what comes before we enter the room, the knowledge of us, right? And then also, yes, our career, our work. So a lot of times here we can figure out like, okay, what do I want to do with my life? Let me look to my 10th house and see if there's any guidance there on career. And when we look at Beyonce, we see in that house that Cancer, so that intuition, and then we also see some Leo in there, right? So Cancer, there's that a little bit of emotional realm. And then with Leo, it's like that extrovert, standing in the spotlight. It's no wonder that she is a singer and she's always on the stage, right? That is perfectly what we would expect from somebody with a Leo in the 10th house. It's just like, hey, here I am, being comfortable, being in the spotlight, right? And then making that their career, right? So looking at your 10th house for career advice. We get around to the 11th house and we're now dealing with humanity. We're now dealing with collectives, right? We're now dealing with, okay, how do we deal with group dynamics? How do we deal with networking? And how do we also deal with really putting our values out there, right? So, looking at your 11th house to understand your larger group networks, not necessarily your intimate friends, but like your larger support groups, your community, maybe even your community on social media, right? We're going to see that in the 11th house. With Beyonce, we have that Leo, again, that piece of Leo. Right. So again, like standing in the spotlight, her way of networking humanity is going to be being out there with her voice, right? Makes sense. And then also Virgo, which is, Virgo is very much about being of service and helping humanity and healing, right? So, there's probably part of her that really wants to help humanity and be of service to them because she has that Virgo in 11th house placement. So, look to your 11th house to see how you deal with like groups at large. And then getting around to 12th house. 12th house is the last house. It is sort of the ending house. It's the house of spirituality. And this is where we find like how we deal with spirituality, how we deal with deeper meaning, how we deal with our thoughts about like death, birth, rebirth. You'll oftentimes find out like in this house, like if you do believe in things that are spiritual in nature, right? We'll see that kind of come up a lot, and how you deal with spiritual things, right? How you deal with even things like astrology, right? It's going to come up in your 12th house. Are you a skeptic or are you a believer? If you're watching this video, you're probably a believer. So, you know, and just seeing like, you know, are you curious, like what energies, what signs going to be there? So for Beyonce in the 12th house, we're going to have some Virgo, which is that service. And then we'll also have Libra, which is all about balance. So she really has, you know, that would indicate that she really has a way of finding balance within her spirituality and balancing it with the rest of her life. We see that a lot when we have Libra placements where it's not that people are skeptics, but they're just like, okay, like let's weigh each side of this coin. And when we apply that to the 12th house and like finding deeper meaning, it really can lead to a very balanced disposition with Libra. If you have something like, say, Pisces in the 12th house, which is home to the 12th house, right? Each of these houses have a home sign, and Pisces is home to the 12th house. Pisces is going to dive right in, right? Pisces is all about spirituality, and they're going to, you know, really excel at this house and make it sort of part of their prime life. You know, somebody with the Aries is going to look about the deeper meaning for them and themselves. Somebody with Aquarius in the 12th house is going to look for the deeper meaning for the collective, per se, what it means for their network and those around them. Right, so, you know, whatever a sign or energy is ruling that house for you, that's how you're going to deal with spirituality. That's how you're going to deal with the more esoteric things of life, along with like how you're going to deal with death itself and the concept of death. So the 12th house is a very interesting house, and I want to really look at, especially if you're sort of feeling troubled or you have issues with finding deeper meanings, or you want to understand the cycles of your life, and you know how your unique energy really interacts with them. All right, so that about sums it up. Those are the 12 houses. I hope that, you know, there was lots of useful information in here. Just kind of sit with your own natal chart, meditate with it, allow it to unfold over time, right? Natal charts, it can take years to understand yours. Even if you meet with an astrologer or somebody who can explain it to you, it really can take a long time to understand it. So, you know, really just let it unfold, take it piece by piece. And we'll get to some other, you know, the planets and stuff in some further videos and what they mean within your natal chart. And if you guys have any questions, you can put them down below. I'll answer a few and just kind of get to them. Probably won't get to all of them, but we'll see. And then, you know, if you want to keep following along, if you like these videos, like please subscribe. And, you know, you'll get notifications and we'll keep it going. I'll try and put them up every Thursday. So next week's a holiday week, so we'll see how we go with that. But we'll really get rolling in the new year with these. And have a great week.